And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering IU women's basketball. This is our 173rd episode, recording on the evening of Thursday, November 6, 2025. I'm your host, Kathy Amos, and joined by my co-host, Jeff Marlow. Today, we'll be talking about the win that the Indiana women opened up their season with over Lipscomb, 46-80. And then we'll highlight a little bit of our next opponents, which is University of Illinois Chicago, or UIC, and Marshall. But before we jump into that, we will start every show with, like we do every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Jeff, for me, I really, honestly, I think I'm just going to go with on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time when we tipped off the season officially. You know, we got our first look at the team finally rolling out there. And it was just kind of exciting to see that ball thrown up in the air and be able to get to see the ladies on TV. For me, I was gone during the exhibition, so I wasn't able to see any of that. So it literally was my first look outside of any kind of small clips on YouTube, or excuse me, on Twitter. So for me, that was my banner moment. It was my highlight of my week for sure, being able to see the women tip off. So for me, that's my banner moment. And our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, the presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating its products for schools in its existing line. In fact, I hear there's some cool, nice jacket, a more heavyweight jacket coming out here maybe tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. But regardless, you are bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get great quality apparel, but you're supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelley School of Business. So go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. That promo code again is HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. Well, normally, Jeff, this is where we would drop some news, but you and I were chatting both during the week via text and just now before we started. And I just honestly, there isn't anything really big news since the last time you and I had a show together, other than the fact that the games are now officially tipped off. So we're going to go ahead and jump right over to you and let's have your Marlow's musings for today.
I really don't have a lot even for the Marlow's musings. I will say that the women took care of business. That an 80-46 win, nice win. You look at the kind of the box score. They were up 25-12 at the end of the first quarter. They were up 43-20 at the half. So they took care of business, did what they had to do. Again, you want to get a nice win at home. I don't think that Lipscomb's going to tell us a whole lot about where this team is going to be in late December or January. Right now, it's about getting reps and building some confidence in some of this team and starting to build chemistry on the floor against an opponent, because that right now is probably the biggest thing that's lacking. But we're going to talk about some of this as well. But for me, just the fact they came out and got a roughly a 35-point victory, took care of business. That's kind of my Marlow's musings for tonight.
Yep, that sounds great. Well, let's just go ahead and jump into it then, Jeff, and talk a little bit about the game recap. So I think first off, one thing that I think we can tell both from the exhibition and from this game, at least as of right now, what our starting five was. And I have to say, there's one name in this list that definitely surprised me. But for those of you who maybe weren't able to watch the game since it was on Big Ten Plus, but just to recap, Lene Beaumont, Shea Chusky, Valina Kadavakova, Nafia Caffey, and Big Z were our starting five. So I know, Jeff, I went back and looked at our prediction show, and we definitely had three of those. I was down between Caffey and someone else, and I ended up between Phoenix, and I ended up picking Phoenix. So I almost was 4 out of 5, but I don't think either of us saw Katalikova as being somebody that was going to be a starting player. But do you have any thoughts on her being inserted into that starting lineup?
We were talking a little bit about this before we came on the live podcast. I think to a certain degree, she brings a familiarity that Coach Morin likes, that's a veteran, at least who has been through the system defensively, to know and can trust her out there a little bit. I was a little surprised just because we didn't see her get a lot of minutes last year for, really kind of what she got was mop up time. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out going forward. I thought the one thing that you and I were talking about pre-show that Maya Mikuleski played 14 minutes. I was a little surprised by only 14 minutes, but she didn't do, again, I think freshman, she's going to have some games like this, but she was 0 for 4 from the field and really didn't put up very many crooked numbers, which surprised me a little bit. But we'll see what happens against UIC and Marshall between now and our next podcast. With that, I thought 3 of the 5 starters put up some really big numbers. We're going to have to get more contribution than just those 3, though. And that's where, again, can Catalikova do that? And Caffey didn't shoot the ball very well. So there are things there that you can kind of be like, this could have looked a whole lot better. But as we're going to talk, there are also a couple things that we're going to highlight that, that's something that's got to get cleaned up.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point, Maya Mikuleski and then Phoenix Stotime, they were the first 2 off the bench. They came in off the bench at the same time. And Phoenix, again, was one of the people I thought might have been our starters. So that was interesting. She ended up playing 20 minutes. So to your point, Maya had 14 minutes and shot all 4 of her shots were from 3-point land too. So, she definitely has some growing pains. I think she must be working through, but they must have a lot of faith, I would guess, in her if they're bringing her first off the bench. So that's kind of where I was at as well, Jeff. In terms of kind of first half, I kind of broke it down into first half and then just the second half was actually kind of more the same. So one thing I noticed that might be a little different, and this is, again, I think what we were expecting with the changes in terms of Coach Morin saying she wanted to have more athletic people. Shea Chesky, I thought, led the way in this, trying to get downhill, and the rest of the team really seemed to follow. So they did not shoot the ball well from 3, and we can talk about that obviously in more detail, but I did think that they made a more pointed effort to get the ball inside on offense. And that 3 definitely was not falling for them on Tuesday night, neither in the first half nor in the second half. But the nice thing was that we did have 7 different players score, and that did not include Catalikova. So you had 4 people or starters scored and 3 off the bench that scored in that first half. But overall, Jeff, do you have any other thoughts around kind of the game that you want to kind of point out to all of our listeners?
Well, I felt like they were trying to play with pace. I did like that part, and I did like the fact that they were trying to get downhill. You look at the box score here; they didn't shoot it very well from 3, but they shot about 60% or so. They would have ended up being like 30 for 51, so roughly 60% from inside the arc. Mm-hmm. I think you can live with that. I think the question is, can you consistently get that kind of performance when we get later in the season against the Big Ten? Again, I'm not trying to be negative on this. I just let's make sure that we're realizing Lipscomb is not going to be the quality opponent that we want to be playing later on in the season, and that we want to get better for. But again, this is the other thing here for me, Kathy, is we did at least Phoenix got 20 minutes, Odessa Noyan got 15 minutes, Maya got 14 minutes. So we had 3 kids off the bench who got double-digit minutes, and that's again, if we can do that, I can live with that. Let's not backtrack, though, into 5 and 6 minutes for the 8th player or maybe even the 7th player. I want to see this be a legit 8-person rotation as we go deeper into the season. And I think they can do that, especially if they want to play downhill. If they want to continue to play a pace, they're going to have to do that. Or at least I think they do. So that's the one thing I kind of took away from it is that, we didn't get a lot of production off the bench, but we at least got minutes and they were out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So other surprises for me, and let me pick one here. So we talked about Catalikova already. The other surprise, and you and I were talking about this before the game, was Faith Wiseman. I think, at least in our minds, we were thinking she might be one of the rotation pieces. And as of right now, I believe she was one of the last, if not the last person off the bench. She only came in and played 3 minutes in a complete blowout game. She did contribute 3 rebounds. She was able to get up 2 shots that she missed them both. And she committed a foul in those 3 minutes. So it was a lot of numbers that she threw up in those 3 minutes. But I think the surprising one is the 3 for me, which is a little surprising. She didn't get a little bit more run in this game, especially with the wide margin that we were ahead. do you want to touch on that or any other surprises that, kind of came out of this game? This is something, again, like you said, we can't take much from this game to write, into the book and pin, but any other thing to put maybe a point in to keep an eye on for later?
Well, I think you can have the same reaction about Chloe Spreen. I think probably thought, at least in this game, Chloe Spreen would get more than 7 minutes. And again, Chloe Spreen made 2 free throws, but she didn't really do much else. She had a rebound and that was it. So in 7 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see her and Faith both. Now you're kind of questioning, thought maybe they'd be rotational pieces. And right now we're kind of thinking it's going to be another year before we really see them on a floor getting major minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. On a positive side, at least in my opinion, I thought Odessa Noyan coming in off the bench, and she had 14 minutes. Now, if you just look strictly at her box score, she only had 2 points. She did contribute 6 rebounds though in that amount of time. Also 3 fouls, which, let's put a pin in the personal fouls and might need to come back to it. And she did have a team high 3 turnovers, but I thought she contributed a lot. She seemed like she played with a lot of energy, and when she came in off of the bench the multiple times, and so she was a bright spot for me in terms of a surprise for sure, coming in off of the bench and giving us some productive minutes in that 14 minutes time. Any other surprises? Yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say about Noyan though, she also had a team high 3 steals. So she was a little bit across the board. Some good, the rebounding, the rebounding, and the steals, but then kind of negatives, didn't really score a whole lot and had a team high 3 turnovers, like you said. So other than that, no, I don't really have anything.
Yeah. So Jeff, let's, maybe touch a little bit on the fouling. I thought, especially in the first half, there were a lot of fouls called on both sides, but especially for our team, they mainly seem to come off of illegal screens and a lot of hand check fouls. It seemed to me, and that's one of the things I want to keep an eye on with this team, is kind of the defensive rotation and being able to move their feet instead of playing defense more with their hands and reaching. We ended up with 2 players with 4 fouls, Odessa Noyan with 3, like I mentioned, and a total of 21 fouls for the team. And especially once we know that Coach Morin starts tightening up that rotation, having, 2 of our main rotation people with Lene Beaumont and Phoenix Stotine having 4 fouls is not going to do real well. Again, first game of the season, lots to clean up like we talked about, but that's something I think to kind of put, on the radar to keep an eye on too, to see how we do with fouling. What other things? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not too concerned about the fouls. I mean, 21 is a high number, and you want to clean that up a little bit. But that first game of the year, you don't know exactly how the officials are going to call it. You got to make adjustments. I kind of noticed watching the men's game last night that I felt like there were some really touch fouls called in that men's game.
Yes,
are they going to call that foul? Are they going to call that foul in January? I doubt it. That's why I don't get worked up about the fouls early on in the season. Now they got to do a better job of adjusting to the officiating, but my gut tells me is this is kind of the same thing we see every year. They're telling the officials, clean it up, get freedom of movement, let the players have freedom of movement, all that, lingo. But when we get to December and January and February, especially in conference play, the whistle will not be blown nearly as often, and they're going to let the kids play, and the game will get more physical. But Lene, to me, is the one that's concerning. I don't want Stotine necessarily to have 4 fouls either, but Lene has to stay on the floor. We don't want her sitting on the bench because of foul trouble.
Yep, absolutely. Agreed. That's a great point too with the officiating. You're right though. But just in my head, I just want to kind of keep an eye on it because I don't want us to be so handsy on defense. So let's see, Jeff, any other thing you want to talk about with the game, or do you want to jump over to notable numbers and continue kind of telling the story of both the team as well as maybe pick out some individuals that we haven't touched on?
Let's talk numbers.
Okay, go for it. You start us off.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to stay in this segment with with the way we kind of revamped it. I'm going to stay more with team here. And so I would have liked to see them get more shots from here, but they were 11 of 12 at the line, 92% from the free throw line. I'd like to see them against Lipscomb. I'd like to see them get to the line a little bbit more, but I can live with 92%, no matter whether it's 12 shots or 22 shots from the free throw line. So that's the first stat I'm going to point out is free throws. Yay. A+++++.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed with that. And then on the flip side of that, I think it would be hard pressed not to talk about the 3-point shooting. They were 1 of 7 in the first half, and after that, they were 2 of 8 in the second half to finish 3 of 15 for 20% from three. Again, just something to keep an eye on. It's the first game, but against, competition and defense of Lipscomb, I would have hoped we would be able to drain more of those. The unfortunate thing was we had a number of players that, put up maybe 1 or 2 or 4 and went over. I think I'm counting here 4 different players put up a 3-pointer and didn't make any of them. You did have Nevaeh Caffey made her 1 3-pointer she made, and then Shay Chusky 2 for 6. And that's your 3 3-pointers right there. So I just think that's something to keep an eye on, because at least historically with Coach Morin's teams here recently, they've been really reliant on the 3 ball, and it just wasn't falling for them. So hopefully it's just an anomaly. Again, one game isn't a pattern per se, but that's one thing to just kind of point out. What other numbers, Jeff, jumped out to you?
I'm going to, again, preface this with quality of the opponent, and we should have probably dominated here, but we were plus 32 in the paint, points in the paint. We scored 56 points in the paint. Lipscomb scored 24. So IU plus 32 on points in the paint. If we could do that, if we can be plus, I'm not expecting us to be plus 32 every game. If we are, we're going to win the national championship. But if we are plus on that, that's a good sign to me. That means that we're spraying the floor out enough that Big Z especially is going to be able to make some things happen. Or, as you mentioned, like a Shay Chesky, Lene Beaumont are getting downhill and finishing in the lane. So that to me is a stat that I'm going to kind of keep an eye on all year. I felt like last year, points in the paint, an area where Indiana, with Mackenzie Holmes being the primary person, but even others besides Mackenzie who could get into the paint and score, that was one place I think we really felt like fell off last year, was points in the paint. So let's see how that trends the rest of the year. Again, Lipscomb, not the best team on our schedule, but again, plus 32. I'm going to give 2 thumbs up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, I didn't really have any other team stats per se, other than I did want to point out 11 steals. I thought was pretty good as well. So the surprising number when I'm looking at the official scorecard here, where the blocks, it only has us down for 2 blocks, which is surprising to me, because I know for sure that Big Z had one. They even highlighted on the Twitter account, but yet in the box score, she doesn't have one. So I felt like we had a lot more blocks than 2. So I'm kind of curious what went on with the box score. But anyway, in terms of numbers, yes, steals, we had 11 steals. I
printed off the one from the IU website. They had the PDF or the box from them has her with 2 blocks. They're crediting her with 2. So 3 total. So that's just what I found. So, but again, I think that's going to be an area, Kathy, that I'm not sure that we're going to be a big rim protection team. I'll be interested to see how it plays out throughout the rest of the season.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and move and start talking about some of the individuals. And while we're at it, we can go ahead and hand out our game ball. So do you want to start it off, Jeff, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you take the game ball first, and I'll go first on the Grace Berger Award.
Yep. Okay. So I think, again, most of the time we look at production here in terms of especially scoring and offensively, but on defensively as well. So there's probably 2 main people that I kind of zeroed in here. The obvious 2, if you're looking at the box score, which is Shay Chusky, who finished with a team high 22 points. She also contributed 5 rebounds and 3 assists. And a steal. And then the second person would be Big Z. She had a career high of 19 points, and she did that on 9 of 10 shooting, 1 of 2 from the line. She also contributed a team high, tied with Odessa Noyan at 6 rebounds. And she also, like I said, I know I saw her with a block. She didn't get contributed to that. So for me, I ended up landing with Big Z for a couple of reasons. I thought, she really kind of sold, the bill that we've been hearing about her being more athletic and the go-to person. And she was having her way, obviously. Again, take it with a grain of salt, blah, blah, blah. But 9 of 10 shooting to me was just a really fantastic and efficient way to start. And you could tell that she is going to be one of the focal points of this offense. So for me, I gave mine to Big Z.
Yeah, I'll make that a unanimous pick, because it's just the efficient. And I'm just going to say it simply. She was more efficient. The 9 of 10, as you pointed out, the 6 rebounds. And again, I'm going with the stat sheet I have: 2 blocks, 2 steals. So I went with Big Z primarily because she was more efficient.
Yep, absolutely. Great. Okay, cool. Well, Jeff, why don't we go switch over to the hardest worker then, and you can touch on maybe some other individuals and tell us who your pick is for the Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award.
Well, this is one where I think that you could have maybe gone, since we went Big Z, you could go with a couple others, primarily our guards, in this case being Shea and Lene, but I'm going to go with Shea here because Shea got 17 shots up. Obviously, she was hunting some shots, but she also was being aggressive. She was being active. She was 4-4 at the line. She had 5 rebounds, and she's not the biggest kid on the floor. And she tied with a team high 3 assists. So, and a steal, as you mentioned. So I'm going to go with Shea here for the Grace Berger Hardest Worker.
Yeah, absolutely. I had her down for mine as well for exactly all of the reasons you had and what I had kind of mentioned earlier in the podcast, where I really thought she was leading the team and being aggressive on offense, whether it was, driving and kicking to somebody else or just trying to make her own shot. She ended up, like you said, with 3 assists as well. Just an honorable shout out, and I want to make sure to mention her, is Nevaeh Caffey. I really enjoyed watching her. Nevaeh Caffey, I thought, was really good on both ends of the floor. And in fact, I was listening to, I can't remember if it was a podcast or something else later, but she's starting to be mentioned from a defensive perspective as somebody to really keep an eye on. And even though she's only credited with 2 steals, I thought she was really disruptive on the defensive end. So I'm really excited to see her the rest of this year as well, too, to see how she continues to grow. So very excited for Nevaeh. So, but Jeff, anything else on that before we move on and talk about our upcoming opponents, plural? Nope. All right. Well, let's go ahead. Obviously, early into the season here, we don't have a whole lot to talk to you about with our upcoming opponents, Jeff. So how about I just take UIC real quick? And if you want to talk about Marshall, I think this will not take long. There's not much to say. So UIC is our next game. That is tomorrow night, November 7th. It will be at 7 Eastern on Big Ten Plus again. They played on Tuesday as well. They lost to Robert Morris 63-87. Again, obviously I didn't watch the game and not much to take away from this, but they were led in points in that game by somebody, Jessica Carruthers. She had 28 points for them. Is that right?
Yeah. Jessica Carruthers, who is an Indiana kid. She's a Crown Point kid.
Okay, nice. So she by far led the team. Obviously, they had 63 points and she had 28 of them. So she's definitely going to be somebody we'll need to watch tomorrow night. And then in terms of their leading rebounder, it was a player by the name of Amelia Strong. So I think the person to watch tomorrow night is Jessica Carruthers. So I'll be curious. Again, I'm not sure a whole lot about her, Jeff. Maybe being a Crown person. That she is guard. Okay. So I would expect Nevaeh Caffey then to probably get that assignment on her tomorrow night. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on.
So Marshall, the opponent after that will be Tuesday next week, the 11th, Veterans Day, 7 o'clock Eastern time start again on Big Ten Plus. They're 1-0 so far. They beat Buffalo 53-39 on Tuesday. They were led by Olivia Olson with 14, and Nikkei Chesterfield and Cassie Ingram each had 11. Hope I said that right. And Blessing King had 11 rebounds. So again, Marshall coming out of, I believe, don't get me, might be Conference USA. I don't think they're in the American. Right. I think they're Conference USA. So again, that'll be a little better opponent than Lipscomb. UIC coming out of, I believe UIC is in the Horizon. I don't think they're in the Valley. So I think they're still in the Horizon or the Summit. So again, a little better competition coming these next couple of games.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff, that's probably about all we can really say on either of those teams with only one game each underneath them. So why don't we go ahead and kick it to final thoughts? What's on your mind to take us out of here?
And my final thoughts kind of go along with my musings. Nice win. Wanted to be 1-0. Unlike last year where we did not get off to a 1-0 start. Again, maybe Harvard probably a little better opponent, but that win at home, take care of your home, and take care of business against a team that really shouldn't be in the game with you to begin with. And so I feel like they got accomplished what they wanted to. And you're trying to get through these non-conference games, especially these bye games per se. You're trying to get through these with wins, looking the way you're supposed to, and then also let's make sure we don't want anybody getting hurt. That you're trying to get through as healthy as you can. Everybody's going to get bumps and bruises as you go through the season. But again, for me, it was just about taking care of business. Look good. Do they have some things they got to improve on? Yes. If they did, every team should be having something to improve on after the first game. But could you see some signs that this team is going to be a little bit better and different than last year's team? Yes. And I think that's what you want to try and build off of.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll echo every single thing you said, and then some. So happy. I mean, obviously happy with the 34-point margin in our first game together with so many new faces and so young, as we mentioned in some of our previous shows, how young they are. And we definitely saw that at times. We started one senior. We had two sophomores, a redshirt sophomore and a freshman out there playing. And then right off the bench, I know we had another freshman coming in right off the bench as well. So very young. And so there's definitely going to be some growing pains, but you're never going to be sad about a 34-point victory. And now, like you said, they had another opponent to go into. And put some stuff on tape that they can get cleaned up here as they go into the game tomorrow night and Tuesday night. So excited to have the ball going again for real. And then we'll start highlighting, later on in the season, we'll talk about some of the other maybe Big Ten schools just to highlight some here and there like we have in the past, especially once we get into conference season. But no big notable Big Ten lineups as of yet. But I believe there are some pretty big games for other Big Ten schools coming up in the near future. But for us, we'll be concentrating on UIC and Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So up next for our podcast, we will return 1 week from today on Thursday, November 13th. We will be talking about the Hoosier games against UIC and Marshall, and we will be highlighting and looking ahead to our next opponents, which in that episode, we'll be looking at Florida State and Butler will be the next two opponents that we'll talk about in that show next week. Again, the game is on Friday and Tuesday, and Jeff and I will be here with you next Thursday. If you want to see see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. You can also be part of our private community where you can find out more about that, assemblycall.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logo. A big thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you heard through the broadcast. Thank you to my co-host, Jeff Marlow, as always, for being here with me to talk IU hoops, and anyone else here in the chat or listening after the fact. Most of all, thank you guys for listening. But we'll be back to talk IU hoops with you in 1 week. And until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. Good job.
Excellent job.
Yes. We're short and sweet. It's nice half an hour. We'll see how we do once we get into the heart of conference season.
And you get more opponents. Like next week, we'll have two opponents to talk about, so it'll take a little longer. But
yeah,
I like the format. I like this format.
I do too. So hopefully, anybody that's still out there, if you give us feedback on how you like this compared to going live right after the show, although we might have to do that a couple of times, like the Butler game is on a Wednesday, so maybe we'll go live after that one, but we'll see. We'll play it by ear, but most of the time we'll plan on going after the fact on either Wednesday or Thursday as schedules allow. So next week we moved it since the men's game is on Wednesday. So that's kind of the plan. So yes, give us some feedback if you like this format or you don't, or have any other suggestions. So Jeff, with that, have yourself a good Friday Eve. One more day to the weekend.
Great week. Have a great weekend, Kathy. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Take care.